with me, and this is the round that is going to decide our top 8. So we have two players that are pseudo locked that we went over before. The Is it Delver player that we saw on the previous round, Frazier, and the Ant player that we saw previously, Anthony. Both XO. Even with the loss, they're still into the top 8. So hopefully we could see some matches that are also playing for the elimination rounds.
Yep, we're gonna be playing or watching some X and ones right here. I believe we're watching Shuen, who we talked about earlier, playing Stryfo Pile, and I think he's playing against Sultai Depths, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So not a matchup. I think two decks we haven't seen on camera yet, so it's gonna be an interesting match for sure.
Yeah, well, one of these decks is definitely a pile after your own heart.
True. Yeah.
So
I do like me some Dak Faden.
We'll try not to be biased or anything, but I'm sure you can also deliver some nice higher level concepts and strategies that are going to be going on here. And the tension against depths seems like it's pretty interesting. So if I recall correctly, this version of Pile doesn't have Oko, right? So you can't just like try to stave off for a turn and then elk it. So what's kind of the plan going to be from the Pile side?
Yeah, so there's no copies of Oko, also no copies of either Baleful Strix or Iceman Quado. So nothing to buy time with that to like maybe unsummon with a Jason Mind Sculptor or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be a little bit trickier from the Pile side. Not too many tools. What he does have access to though, that is pretty atypical of a deck like this, is he has access to 4 copies of Assassin's Trophy,
Oh
which you
wow.
can use to fizzle the activation of well, not fizzle the activation, but to kill the Thespian stage after it becomes a copy of Dark Depths before it becomes Mirror Lake herself. So definitely going to be an interesting dynamic there. I think that probably he's going to be a little bit worse off than normally. Of course, he's going to be significantly worse off than if he had access to stuff like Swords of Plowshares, but he opted to not play the white build this weekend for um, various reasons, like we spoke about earlier. Like the absence of Veil made discard spells better, so we'll see how that plays out.
There's also you have access to Uro plus like Jason Mind Sculptor, so you can kind of
Yeah.
monitor your life total, not crack too many fetches, and just one Uro allows you to eat a hit.
Yeah, as long as you get over that 20-point threshold.
And then
Only
there's also
only
one
one
Brazen
copy of
Bar,
Jace, unfortunately, and the one
and
Brazen Bar. Yeah, good call.
which is definitely a big game. And then over here we're seeing the Sultai Depths list that he's going to be playing against, and this one has Reclaimer, which is kind of the the one man army in this deck.
Yeah, Reclaimer's kind of does it all. Kind of a pretty big upgrade for this deck when it got printed. Um, and we see this is the Sultai variant of the deck, which I believe um Thomas is his name. Negator77 on Moto is the one who popularized this version of the deck, just splashing some brainstorms, some flusterstorms after board to help shore up some of the more difficult combo matchups, and of course the Miser Stifle that is all too common in the list that he plays.
Yeah, Tom Hep and I are people that go way back. We have an awesome friendship, and throughout our various bouts, just like seeing one stifle and all this stuff, and I always jab him for it. But like it's kind of like a signature touch on it. It's like back in the Deathrite Shaman, like Grixis Delver days, everyone's playing Vanilla Click on the board, and I played one Snapcaster, and whenever someone else played one Snapcaster, I'm like, I know where that came from.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see how those sorts of situations arise. So I'm really happy to see Tom play his signature list. I know there's been various times where he feels like he has to play turbo depths, and that's not really the type of depths he likes playing. So it's nice to see him go back to this.
And Shuen, actually, another player from my local game store, actually, and I've played many a pile mirrors against him. So
Jeez, you have so many people on your LGS.
it's just the two, I swear. But looks like we have our champions here for this winning in.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this one. Just two really good players. I mean, due to how breakers work, it could be possible that one of them's in with a loss, but when you know you're in with a win, you are definitely going to fight for it.
Yeah, of course.
So being on the play, Tom is able to play this Elvish Reclaimer and kind of sneak it in under the Thoughtseize, and Thoughtseizes loses value pretty quickly.
Yeah, definitely something that Schwen would have been pretty happy getting rid of, especially this volcanic island being a stain in his hand with the two copies of Assassin's Trophy. But that is kind of what you sign up for, and the trophy is going to be good going later. So not that big of a deal here, but he's gonna have to find a way to deal with this reclaimer, or else it's just gonna outgrind him. Tom is gonna be able to present multiple threats, and never really have to extend it too far, and it also represents um a instant speed security step if Schwen was to find that one copy of Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, exactly. Like pretty much what I said in the pregame show. Like Elvish Reclaimer really is the one man army. Like this hand, like after the crop rotation left and pre Sylvan Scrying draw step, just had no way to get the combo. But if this creature lives, it gets the full combo. But punching fire off the top.
Yeah, a fantastic draw, and actually, everything kind of coming up Schwen here because that Urborg is also helping to facilitate these Assassin's trophies. So,
Yeah,
as long as that doesn't get sacrificed to the Reclaimer, it's gonna be pretty good for Schwen.
yeah, I do understand that Tom chose to go for this sort of play. That way he could try to set up the fastest 2020 as possible. But he could have instead played Mist Reinforce, cracked it, and then just main phase activated the Reclaimer. So you get 3 lands in the discard pile, then maybe your Reclaimer lives a higher percentage of the time because like, it doesn't die to Punishing Fire. So maybe a misstep overall there. But knowing that you have the Sylvan Scrying in your hand, maybe you're okay with this exchange.
Yeah, definitely interesting. There are only two copies of Punishing Fire, but I suppose there's also one copy of Lightning Bolt.
There's
So
also Drown in the Lock, right? But Drown would hit it
that would have
anyway.
hit it anyways. I
Yeah.
think. I think it's CMC. So. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, perhaps Tom feeling like he needs to go a little quicker. Perhaps doesn't like his positioning going late against all the possible copies of Assassin's Trophy. He doesn't have any discard spells to pave the way. Um, and the thing about these depth stacks, and I've played a lot against these strategies. I'm pretty close with Matthew Dilks, who I'm sure you know,
Yep.
plays a lot of dark depth strategies as well. And something that he
Yeah.
speaks to a lot is the fact that these depth stacks can put these control decks in a position where they kind of just like stone rain them several times for the rest of the game once they have the combo in play, but they're never forced to go for it. So
Mm.
the sooner Tom can set up Thespian Stage plus Dark Depths in play, the sooner Schwen is in a position where he can't tap his mana for the rest of the game, and I believe that that's the type of jockeying that favors the depth stack by a lot.
Yeah. So I guess if people wanted to allude to another deck that did something similar, I guess it'd be Splinter Twin. Like I have to leave up all this mana to be able to interact with the Exarch on my end step. The fact that you could play this twin. One interesting thing here was the decision to play Brainstorm. It's kind of alluding to the fact that, hey, I can't beat you in this game over time. You played Sylvan Scrying. I just have to hit my land drops and find some action. And so playing the Brainstorm there, even though like the Stryfo pile player was probably aware that the Urborg allowed the volcanic island to be able to cast Assassin's Trophy, just ultimately saying, I know that you can do this land destruction like sort of thing that you described, and then just choosing a brainstorm and kind of making it about that.
Exactly. So I'm interested here to see. Okay, so it looks like he opted not to, because Tom could have made Mare Ledge there, and I believe the only card that would beat him from that spot is the one copy of Brazen Borrower.
Yep.
Um,
Which
but
means that Tom thinks his equity is even higher here.
right, which is a huge sign of strength. But it's exactly what I was speaking to earlier, right? Like basically, Schwen has no lands in play right now.
Yeah. Like,
He
like
cannot do anything with his mana at any point, and
yeah,
he doesn't have flash threads. There's no quados in the deck. There's nothing he can really effectively do with his mana on Tom's end step, and basically just needs to naturally draw some lands in order to get it to be a player in this game at all.
right. The get ahead mechanics are all sorcery based, and so you need to not only hit your lands, but then you need to have like the interaction to line up when you do play your sorcery speed things that allow you to like develop more lands. Like it's just the cycle that's like not going well for you. What Tom I think is really waiting for is just more of the insurance. Like I'm not just gonna say, okay, I think like You don't have Brazen Borrower, I'm going for it. Like Tom's not going to do that here because he has such a big advantage, which I'm glad you outlined earlier. So now it's just like, okay, can I also now set up Sajiri Step and like some other components that allow my 2020 to also beat, say, Brazen Borrower plus Force of Will blue card?
Right. Yeah, if you find like a wasteland, for instance, you can go for it with no fear.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
true.
crop rotation for either wasteland or security step.
Okay, but choosing to go for it here. So
Okay, so perhaps
interesting.
felt that not now that Schwan got to cantrip a few more times, he felt like his positioning is less likely to be good going forward. Um, and decided to make the Mirror Lake underneath the potential of Assassin's Trophy, and Schwen does not have the copy of Brazen Bar, and Tom takes game one.
I wonder how much of it also factored into the fact that I wonder how much of it was that he drew Brainstorm, which changes your hand so much and really utilizes your extra mana for, say, Brainstorm, do this other thing. Now I can make another 2020 next turn. So maybe just the probability of being able to make two 2020s over time causes him to make the 2020 there.
Right, yeah, that's a good point, because even the worst case scenario is that there's the one Brazen Bar, but then after that, um, there's nothing left, right?
Mhm.
I suppose there's the one case the Mind Sculptor, but that involves um being able to prevent the kill at instance, like the one attack for 20, which is not an easy feat when he's already at 17. So pretty likely that he just ends up being able to go again and fighting through it even in the worst case scenario.
Can you walk me through what Schwen's doing in his sideboard?
Yeah, so Shrine has a lot of cards that don't have too much text, um, so that are easy cuts. But he has access to crop rotation Caracas, which is something that I love playing in the black version of Pile, of four color Pile, because you are someone weak to Mirror Lake without access to Source of Plowshares, and this is a very easy way to get a lot of extra percentage against these decks.
Hmm.
And you can really see that in his sideboard, because he doesn't really have too much more going on. It's possible he was sort of writing off this matchup again, like without access to Strix or Quotal, no Uros, or sorry, not no Uros, no Okos. This
Mm.
matchup is pretty tough, and it can be pretty difficult to devote a lot of sideboard cards in order to swing the matchup. So I think it's better to just have this like one really powerful hammer that doesn't take that much of the sideboard and is capable of just winning the game on its own.
Yeah, another thing I like to highlight about that is what you said earlier about the depth player able to just virtually stone rain the control, like a more controlling deck. But with open deck lists, like Tom's going to have to respect that a percentage of the time, and your cost is only leaving up one mana instead of like
Hmm.
two or more. So it's a lot less taxing that now they have to respect you for a much lower cost of mana.
Yeah, and if you draw the crop rotation instead of the Caracas, it's that one mana is very easy to keep up, because it can even be in the form of a fetch land, so it doesn't get interacted by wasteland at all. Um, and it also doesn't get interacted by security steps, so it's a very clean way to combat everything that's going on. It does still get interacted by
Not of this
not
world.
of this world, but I didn't see if Tom brought it in, but I don't think that they usually do.
One thing that's cute on both sides is they're both crop rotation decks that can have their bullets in their hands, say Sajiri Step on Tom's side, but they're also both brainstorm decks. So not a combo that you always see, but being able to brainstorm back, like it's like how elves kind of wishes sometimes that they could brainstorm back their progenitus. You get to do that here, and all at instant speed. So you can be
Hmm.
like, yeah, I guess I'll hold onto this Caracas in my hand, and then like I have this crop rotation and this brainstorm. So if I just need to play Caracas, I can, and then if I need to get it later, I can too. So we see a brainstorm in response to this duress, so kind of picking what the duress is allowed to take.
Yeah, he ended up brainstorming into. So when you brainstorm in response to duress, you basically get the option of protecting multiple cards or shuffling away one. He ended up brainstorming it into two additional lands, I think. And his hand was already kind of land heavy, so he opted just to protect the ground in the lock, and shuffle away one of the lands, which I like a lot. Um, and I think Drown in the Lock was the best one to protect. It's pretty close as to whether or not you would want to protect Ponder.
Mhm.
But the problem with that is that he doesn't have too many really good cards to hit off Ponder. If he had more bullets, like Oko would be the big one. I think it would be a more difficult decision, but the Drown in the Lock protects his hand from future discard, an Elvish Reclaimer, stuff like that.
Yeah, one thing that's subtle that came up last game is the Urborg does really help the pile deck too. So we see that
Yeah,
Drown in the Lock being cast off of these tri.
it's I've definitely been uh, I guess bamboozled for lack of a better term a couple times by doing exactly this and fetching some tri lands in the face of an Urborg and then getting got by a crop rotation. So
Yep.
um, hopefully Schwen doesn't walk too hard into that, but he does still have one delta left, so you can still fetch another black source if he needs to.
Yeah, and it's funny because crop rotation like does it as a part of the cost, so you can't float in response.
Right, you never get an opportunity. Just
Flusterstorm,
here
so
to see,
coming in from the sideboard.
yeah, Flusterstorm makes sense with the quantity of Assassin's trophies that Schwen has access to. Um, Pretty clean way to answer that. Schwen is very unlikely to keep up enough mana in order to play through the Flusterstorm. I am surprised to see that he didn't develop Uro on that turn. I think the reason is he was concerned about the Reclaimer getting Bog. I can't think of another compelling reason, but he can wait until he has access to 6 mana to like play and flashback Uro at the same time
Yep.
and get out of the 20 point range as quickly as possible.
I also think we are more likely to see Uro the following turn. That way you can have up 2 mana and have a wider variety of things that are going to disincentivize comboing off, even though it's pretty unlikely Tom's able to go off of the base that he had at that time. But
Right,
maybe
yeah,
just
that
an
makes
overall
sense.
safer play.
Yeah, a little insurance, a little bit of posturing, showing strength, which is definitely important as we've seen in previous rounds.
Yeah,
And
it's a little bit harder after your hand was thought seized, but still just you did choose to do it and they know that you know, like that sort of thing. So
you know,
maybe it
a little bit of
disincentivizes them
mind
to go.
gaming there.
Yeah.
So we did see some good draw steps from Shuen off the Clean to Dust, and then a natural draw step. He found a trophy and a crop rotation, so plenty of interaction here. That being said, uh, this Reclaimer does threaten to allow Tom to go multiple times, so certainly something that needs to be dealt with at some point.
Yeah, there's a bunch of really cute like iterations of things that can happen potentially due to both Flusterstorm and Crocus. Like if some of the pieces line up a certain way, sometimes you can like have multiple stages and only one depths, and then you like have the stage copy the depths, and then they would probably wait for that to resolve. That way you have a depths with no counters on it, then you stage that depth when they try to interact with it. It's
Oh, right, yeah.
yeah, there's many iterations of what can happen, but choosing the trophy here is just like I'm just not going to deal with like a lot of those possibilities. If you want to act here, like go for it. And
Yeah, and I think that this Reclaimer represents at least as much as what this trophy is going to trade with. So I think I like this trade a lot.
yeah,
Um, and just yeah, eliminating a lot of Tom's decisions and notably instant speed play that makes things awkward for Schwen.
yeah. So you alluded to how the depths player can build this advantage over time of virtually stone raining the opponent. Depths doesn't innately have a way to pull ahead. Like they don't have Life from the Loam or Dark Confidant, these sorts of builds that are like building an advantage over time. It's really a Reclaimer that allows the stalling plan to just like skyrocket for the depths player. Like the depths player is like very dense in what they do, so probabilistically they're ahead when you're both just land going. But if you can address the Reclaimer and the fact that you have the insurance of the crop rotation, uh, makes sense as to why a card as important as Trophy for addressing Dark Depths is being used like this.
And actually, something that I hadn't noticed previously, but I'm sure Schwen noticed, is that the depth deck actually does not have access to a basic land, since he is
Oh
playing a Sultai
wow!
variant. So which is actually a pretty big deal because The thing you were speaking to earlier about the double thespian stage way to interact through an assassin's trophy would have been a much more relevant piece of interaction had Tom had an extra mana in play right now. Um, but
Yeah, I'm
the
glad you
blue
pointed that
splash
out.
coming back to bite him a little bit there.
Jeez. Yeah, choosing to play, one of your favorite cards, Gemstone Mine, instead.
Yes, the legacy staple, only ever doing fair things.
Okay, so just shoving here, and
Y-
ultimately gonna be met with this crop rotation.
Yeah,
But
so not putting Schwen on another piece of interaction here. Um,
I I
the
I
the
wonder.
Flusterstorm isn't good enough to combat either trophy or crop rotation, so but he does have Sylvan Scrying and Stage, which lets him like kind of play through a trophy by just going again the following turn. But this crop rotation is going to be pretty devastating for him, I think.
So the thing that's interesting for me is, um, Tom is aware of both the Grove of the Burnwills and the Arrow from the previous discard steps. So on that end step where the trophy was being cast on the Reclaimer, there was only one unknown card, which was this crop rotation. And Tom chose to not go for it here. Then a card was drawn and a non-Grove of the Burnwillows land was played, which means it's more than likely whatever card caused the trophy the last turn is causing, like it's causing this Uro not being played in the same exact way. And I think ultimately choosing not to play Uro is because you could generate this, like, I play Uro and Caracas it. Maybe that's like a better game plan here for whatever reason. But I sort of like question Tom's decision to go for it there, but I can see him just being like, okay, A, it's not getting much better for me. I'm going to play the percentage points here. But B, um, you get to trophy me, and like if I just never go for it, then like that's just giving too much time. Like it adds too much like variance and bad things happening.
Yeah, what he has to ask himself is, does his position get better, or how frequently does his position get better? And he could be weighing that there are so few things that allow him to do that.
Yeah, so very interesting. I don't like doubt the play that either player made, and it's very interesting how the game shook up afterwards.
It is pretty curious, like even on the basic level, like why would Schwen not cycle his Uro, right?
Yeah,
Like what would be his reasoning for doing that? And we know that his reasoning was he had a piece of interaction and he wanted to play through a Flusterstorm, which is super heads up. Um, but perhaps a question that Tom needed to review in a little bit more detail in order to determine whether or not to go for it.
yeah, but once again, it could just be the fact that it's not getting any better for him.
Yeah, and I'm sure these people have played a lot on Moto, but both avid Moto grinders, and I'm wondering if a lot of it comes down to Tom knowing that Schwen would make that play on the Reclaimer regardless of what his hand is, right?
Exactly, and I
Uh,
think that's something experienced players on both sides, like playing the trophy, is still concealing the crop rotation.
Very interesting for sure.
So drawing the wasteland here is fantastic for addressing the Crocus, and now it's just shifting back in the other way.
Yeah, we saw him scrying for that wasteland last turn actually. Since it's only a one of, so he decided to get that one instead of a redundant depths, which makes sense. Gives you more outs, and he drew another scrying this turn. So he is
Two depth
capable
adapts. Yeah.
of dealing with his Caracas and re-upping on Mirror Lake on the following turn, but Schwen managed to find a Snapcaster mage for trophy. So, oh no, the trophy is gone. Actually,
Yep.
it
Clinged.
got delved away to the Cling to Dust. Interesting.
Yeah. So maybe choosing to, if we're using that terminology, flashback the arrow, and then
Yes,
um,
escape. My apologies.
that's fine.
Jeez.
I say flashback arrow all the time. Like for me, there's only like three mechanics in Magic. There's like flashback, kicker, and I forget what the other one. But so many things are kicker in Magic.
Yeah, every mechanic is just kicker.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
Schwen is at 22, so he has some time here. He's gonna get a couple attacks off the Uro, or a attack, I suppose, and he has a lot of selection here.
yeah, but I like how Tom was able to rebuild here and sort of identifying that the trophy play is always going to happen. So I'm going to go for it because I know you're always going to trophy my reclaimer. Oh, you happen to have interaction. Okay, I'll just like rebuild. Like the worst thing happened, and Tom is still just in this game, which
Mm-hmm.
shows just like a level of understanding of how to go for it, but like how bad is it actually for me? Because it looks so bad. You put all these resources and time into 2020. And it's like it kind of feels bad when you just get Caracas.
It's baiting the bounce on the euro. I like it. I like how Legacy has all these build your own howling mines now. Uh,
Yeah, Baron too, right?
oh yeah, Baron as well. Yeah,
Yeah, we saw that a little bit in round one, so it kind of stuck out to me.
I've played through many a Leyline of the Void by using Caracas on my euro.
Yeah, I gotta stack those triggers right the first time, right? When
All
you
right,
don't have the
exactly.
Caracas.
All right, so Ponder here. Schwen does need to find something.
So
Luckily
Brazen
for him, he's
Borrower.
already at 22, so he doesn't have to necessarily attack the Uro into the Merit Lage. But his outs are pretty slim, since Trophy no longer does it. Well,
Whoa, finds Jace the Mind Sculptor though.
and that's a big one because not only does that deal with the Merit Lage, but it also obviously deals with the rest of the game by brainstorming every turn, as we know, as Jason Mind Sculptor has done for the past 10 years or so.
It has to be longer, right?
World Awake 20. It's right before I started playing, so I think it's 2011, right?
Oh geez, I didn't realize.
20.
So
Maybe it's
I
more.
would just assume you've been playing forever.
No,
Wow, Edgar's such a baby. Look at him,
I'm,
and he's
uh,
doing legacy commentary. Jarvis and I are like old fogies in this game. I forgot how long Jarvis has been playing, but I mean, I've been playing for 90 since '99, so like tons of other people have like played longer than me. But oh, look at Edgar. All right, so do you think any of the pile strategies change when play draws sort of thing?
no, I don't. I don't think it's play draw dependent at all. Um, be curious to see. I know personally, I find that the forcible effects are pretty mediocre in this matchup. There's not like a lot that you actually want to force. Um, since
So
the deck is so discard spell heavy and like they're pretty effective at playing through stuff like that, but you do want access to some of it just because of like crop rotation. You can deal with the claimer on turn one, but I think on the play, like discard spells get a little bit better. But now that he's on the draw, perhaps he wants to lean more on like perhaps bringing that force negation.
yeah, so the interesting thing for me is Thoughtseize is directly trying to line like on turn one, obviously you'll take any of the pieces you can, but in the late game, it's kind of like spell scudding Flusterstorm or however you want to put it.
Sure, yeah.
And I wonder if that's worth it. Like it's just kind of an interesting situation. And Tom, just does whatever he wants with this deck. Boards out some of the brainstorms, but ultimately choosing to board brainstorms in a similar way that Jarvis and I discussed in the previous match. That once your deck does what it needs to in the matchup, you don't necessarily need as much filtering.
hmm Yeah, and it could depend on like how he positions himself as well. Like he actually brought in the Not of This World, which is not something that I expected, but that kind of coincides with that a little bit, right? Where he wants to play the short game instead of a long game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how a deck that's just making a 2020 we can refer to as like trying to be aggro or more
Yeah,
controlling.
I mean that's essentially what it is. It's your Mirror Lake beatdown strategy. Just beats down a little bit quicker than people are used to.
Yeah, exactly. And we are in 2020. If there's going to be a good year for Merit Lage, it better be this one.
So we see a mulligan. We saw a mulligan from Tom.
Yeah, put back
Um,
the Stifle, which I think makes a lot of sense. Stifle is also pretty interesting. It's like a pseudo not of this world because you get to stop the Caracas activation.
and he saw a lot of weakness from Schwent's side, which uh is pretty apparent here from him opting to just crop rotation for the Thespian stage right now. He has access to this Not of the World, which plays around a top deck crop rotation or Caracas, and I think he's looking to end this game as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and that duress being very informative. Tom being on a mulligan. I know Tom actually doesn't like Not of This World that much, so seeing it not only in his list but in his hand and deck like means that he's like, yeah, I just have to go for it. I hate it, but I'm just gonna go for it type of thing. It's pretty interesting to me not casting the Sylvan Scrying here though, because
Yeah,
you can't activate the stage.
that was interesting to me as well. I thought he was going to fetch a Bayou and then scrying for the crop,
Mhm.
which leaves him Storm mana open for like a potential discard spell, if he needs to do that, and then he has access to, and he can protect his Knot of the World, of course, and then he has access to combo the following turn, but. Instead of opting to just play the Dark Depths, and he kind of got paid off. He drew Vampire Hexmage, so now he gets to get the Urborg, and next turn he's going to have a lot of protection.
Yeah, I
Um,
think
he he should just
yeah,
go for it now, right?
yeah,
Because Not of This World does not counter Assassin's Trophy, but it does counter everything else, I believe.
if it's crop rotation, then you lose to it in the turn cycle.
Oh, right, Schwenn's at 23, of course.
Well,
Um,
also just it's like Caracas on your end step and then a Caracas on my turn.
oh, if the crop rotations right now because of the Grove of the Burn Willows, yeah,
Yeah,
good point.
yeah. So, geez, this turn's like pretty rough.
Yeah, it's difficult because the whole 23 dynamic it changes so much, right?
Yeah.
It almost the 3 life almost just counters the Not of This World. So I wonder if Tom is actually just interested in like attacking with Hexmage a couple times and trying to um get Schwen back down to a one shot territory, because both Caracas and Chase the Mind Sculptor is going to be able to deal with the Knot of This World just over 2 turns if the Mirror Legs doesn't one shot it.
Mhm. So I've had this discussion with a lot of my friends. You can only choose one word to describe this. Is First Strike an attacking mechanic or a defensive mechanic?
Well, for me, it's a defensive mechanic.
Yeah. I also think it's one of the most like defensive mechanics in the game. But it's like it's so weird, right? Because it's like attacking first or like allows you to attack into certain board states. But
Yeah,
man, the first strike wall is just so much. But yeah, so like even though we both view it as a defensive mechanic, it being able to sneak past these snapcaster mages just can really allow Tom to kind of get through the Uro.
yeah, it's a very slow process, but it's certainly a way that he can tackle this game.
Yeah, one thing that's also interesting is Schwen actually needed a pretty decent draw step there to enable Jason Mind Sculptor, which is kind of the plan. Like, obviously, he wants crop rotation. I mean, there's no way around that. Or like Assassin Trophy isn't great right now, but or if he goes for it on end step, it's good enough. Um, but getting the second blue means that you can at least play towards this Jason the Mind Sculptor plan with your extra life total.
Yeah, and just it lets him cast more spells too, because he's just very gummed up on blue spells in general. Um, and we're seeing the some of the downside here of not being an astrolabe mana base is just that sometimes your mana doesn't line up as well as you're used to,
Yeah,
and
like if there was an Astrolabe in play, might have been able to Snapcaster, like Ponder, and maybe a lot of the structure would have been different. There's one thing that Tom did that's pretty interesting. By delaying the Sylvan Scrying, you cause fetch lines to be slightly different because he ultimately got the Urborg. Whoa, Plague Engineer. That's not even a card I expected to come in this matchup.
yeah, interesting. Typically it's kind of decent because it deals with both Dark Confidant and
Name
Hexmage.
Avatar. Avatar.
I believe that they're both no, they're not both wizards. Never mind, it's a vampire shaman. So yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, looks like
Oh,
Shaman was
you
named.
know what it is? It's Tom has a copy of Sylvan Safekeeper after board, which is
Hmm.
kind of a nightmare card for these pile decks. But also kind of nice here because he was able to force the issue on this Hex Mage. Um, and then he can deal with the Mirror Lake with the Jason Mind Sculptor, but he's going to get blown out by this Not of This World.
Well, there's
Unless he
seven cards
draws
in the
something.
graveyard now, right? So drown, like if he drew another blue source, he would be able to drown in the lock the Not of This World.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And this Force of Will. also would have been good, but the Flusterstorm on the other side is going to seal the deal, I believe.
Wow. Th- this game was like pretty interesting, even though I guess not the most amount of things happened. I do want to talk to like Tom on my own time to understand like the earlier play that you discussed that was unintuitive to us.
Yeah, definitely a lot going on.
Yeah, so Tom Heff, very well known for this one stifle, Sultai Death's very good friend of mine. I try to be non-partial, but just very happy to
You're
see
the
him in the
champion of
final.
this feature match. Don't worry.
Just very happy to see a really good friend of mine in the top eight of this event. So it
Yep.
looks like we're going to be able to get you another feature match. What's this
Sweet.
one going to be, Edgar?